Good afternoon from New York. I am Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS As It Is. Welcome to another edition, and thank you for joining us this afternoon because our guest this afternoon is, I should say this evening rather, is a son of our soil who has just been appointed the new Vice-Chancellor of the University of Guyana. As many of you would know, it's an institution of higher learning in our country, but an institution that has experienced all sorts of unrest over the past few years and so on. I would like to let me just bring on Dr. Griffith, and I'll read a little bit of his bio for those of you who are not too acquainted with him. Dr. Ivelaw Lloyd Griffith is the new Vice-Chancellor of the University of Guyana, Executive in Residence at the University at Albany, State University of New York. He also is associated at Manchester Trade International Business Advisors and Senior Fellow of the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, both in Washington, D.C. He served as the 9th president of Fort Valley State University in Georgia from July 2013 to June 2015. There he led the right sizing of the educational and economic enterprise, focusing on growing enrollment, enhancing the academic profile, improving community and corporate linkages, controlling expenditure, launching an honors program and an undergraduate research program, and initiating a feasibility study to establish a school of entrepreneurship and business innovation. Dr. Griffith holds a Bachelor of Social Sciences with distinction in Political Science from the University of Guyana, a Master of Arts in Political Science and Public Administration from Long Island University, New York, and both a Master of Philosophy and a PhD in Political Science from the City University of New York Graduate School. He also graduated from Harvard Graduate School of Education's program in Educational Leadership. Dr. Griffith, good afternoon and welcome again.
Good evening and delighted to be here again, Selwyn.
Well, congratulations on your recent appointment to Vice-Chancellor
Thank you.
of the University of Guyana, and congratulations on being awarded the 2015 William J. Perry Award, named in honor of former United States Defense Secretary Dr. William J. Perry.
Thank you much, Selwyn.
Dr. Griffith, let's just jump right into it. As a former student of the University of Guyana, how does it feel to be now its new Vice-Chancellor?
You know, in life, one wants to make not just a mark, but a significant mark. And for me, having the opportunity, having been a student at the University of Guyana, having the opportunity to now lead its enterprise is a significant mark. But I must tell you, Selwyn, that it's a significant mark that comes with some bittersweet elements. Bitter in the sense that I would have much preferred to have been going to a university, to my alma mater, to enable it to grow from the strong position. I'm going now to help it to grow from a very weak position. And so that for me is a bittersweet. It allows me to make a significant mark, but given the condition of the university, it means having to build from the bottom up rather than from the middle floor to the top.
While a student there in the 70s, did you ever imagine returning to where your academic journey began at UG to teach in any capacity?
I taught for 1 year after I graduated, tutoring, but did not contemplate returning as a full-time lecturer or even administrator. I really wanted to go in, not in the academy. My initial career path was to be an international lawyer. As a matter of fact, not only was I the first person in political science to graduate with distinction, but I had done so well that I was exempted from the first year of the UE law program. And I started the second year of the law degree at the University of Guyana. But then there were a number of domestic factors that occasioned the need for me to leave Guyana. And so, you know, sometimes you're young and you don't want to wait.
Yes.
So when I came to New York, rather than waiting to do the LSATs and all that kind of stuff, I decided just to go the route of the academy. But it's a wonderful opportunity to return to the origins, so to speak.
Yes. So to say, after an exhaustive national, regional, and international search, you were selected as the 10th Vice-Chancellor.
Mm-hmm.
What were you present to when you heard the good news?
You know, I mentioned making a significant mark. The news arrived with a confirmation that here is an opportunity to make that significant mark. But it was also an opportunity for me to say, making that significant mark, given the condition of the university, would require me leveraging all resources possible. And so I'm fortunate to have a number of friends in very many places, many of whom are also alums of the university, within the Caribbean, within Guyana, within the United States, within Europe. And so I immediately began to think of how do I, given this opportunity, begin to leverage the resource that is there outside of Guyana and inside of Guyana to make the kind of significant contributions that I think are important to make.
There are some who might be wondering, it was an exhaustive search for the right person, what the process was like. Can you walk us through the most memorable part of this process?
For me, there were two, perhaps three memorable aspects to that process. One was, and I was visiting for the first time the Tain campus. I was delighted to see in that session with the Tain colleagues, not only administrators and lecturers, there were about 40 students. And I made the point there, and I made the point elsewhere in the search process, that sometimes universities, and I've been at universities across the United States and in other continents, in other countries, sometimes universities forget why they're there. And I reminded folks that you wouldn't have a vice-chancellor needed, or a lecturer needed, or a dean needed, if you didn't have students. And so I was quite impressed and delighted to have the students ask powerful questions, make very powerful observations at that Tain campus in Berbice. And then the second memorable occasion was the opportunity to have the public discourse, the public lecture, I think on April the 12th. A robust conversation that allowed me to see not only the passion of people at the university, but the anxiety for a different paradigm, a different dispensation. So if I had to identify two signally memorable occasions in the process, it was talking with those students and lecturers and staff at Berbice, and then the public discourse at Turkine.
I want to regurgitate some of your words. I read in the newspapers, Guyana's sole national institution of higher learning is a long-neglected educational enterprise that must be transformed into a meaningful facilitator of educational and economic development. For citizens and society, it must foster dreaming and doing about changing personal and societal realities and enable discovery in all relevant fields. How are you convinced, Dr. Griffith, not only that it is possible, but you can influence the transformation of this long-neglected educational enterprise?
So before I answer that question, which is a good question, I want to pause and ask our viewers to observe a moment of, even if it's a nanosecond of silence, for the murder recently, this past week, of someone who helped to make the enterprise at the University of Guyana what it became. And that is the murder of Dr. Perry Mars. Taught me at the University of Guyana, became a good friend over decades, and had the misfortune of being murdered in his own home. I spoke to his wife, Joan, this morning, working on funeral arrangements. And so I want us to, in thinking of becoming the enterprise, we cannot forget the people who labored in the vineyards. And Perry Mars, Dr. Perry Mars, Professor Perry Mars is one of those. So condolences to Joan and the rest of the family. And I intend to have a memorial on campus in the not too distant future. You know, someone asked me during the public discourse on April 12th, and the conversation had to do with why is it the university is having difficulty in certain aspects of the STEM arena, science, technology, engineering, and math. And I pointed to the fact that no credible university can afford to ask the question, can we afford some things? The question often has to be flipped. Can we afford not to be able to afford some things? And I would say in the context of the University of Guyana, we cannot not afford innovation. We cannot not afford to have the dreams of young Guyanese, young Caribbeans. My hope is to make young South Americans, I'll come back to that connection, make their dreams and the dreams of Guyana come possible. And we cannot do that by just practicing the science of muddling through. And unfortunately, what Guyana's sole national university has been contending with for the past couple of decades is practicing the science of muddling through. We cannot, there is too much at stake for us not to go from where we are to a place that is big and bold, that befits the dreams of individual citizens, that befits the dreams of the nation, and befits the dreams of the region in South America, of which we are part.
I am so glad that you, even though a little bit ahead of time, that you mentioned South America and other parts of the region, because I had a question for you later on in the conversation about linkages and exposing the University of Guyana to the global community. Let me go ahead and I'll just ask the question anyway. How interested are you in doing such, in exposing the University of Guyana students to other parts of the world?
There's a wonderful book written by Thomas Friedman, a book called The World is Flat. First edition, I think 2004, 2006.
The World is Flat.
You didn't have to read Thomas Friedman's book, which speaks to the connectivity of the world, the globalization of the world, to appreciate that no part of the world can afford not to be connected to other parts of the world. Guyana cannot afford to be disconnected. Guyana's leading national institution cannot afford to be disconnected. And so there is some good news in that the University of Guyana has had a series of international connectivities. The not so good news is that the follow through and making those connectivities realize for Guyana's benefit has not been what it should be. And so I intend to build on some of the connectivities that are there. I'll give you a couple. Wayne State, Ohio University, Anton de Kom in Suriname, University of West Indies, Leisha in UK. Those are just some of the institutions with which University of Guyana already has. But we need to institutionalize them, regularize them, ensure that when we sign a document, it's not signed and put on a shelf, that it is actually actualized, and that the things that the documents speak to the memoranda of understanding, those things happen. But I think this is an opportunity as well for the University of Guyana to build broader connectivity. I made a point both in Berbice and in Georgetown, and I'll be making the point on the 22nd at a forum on campus. Guyana has to actualize what its geographic destiny is. We are not only culturally and historically Caribbean, but we are geographically South American. And so we've got to leverage that geography in the benefit of the nation, Guyana, for the benefit of the region, Caribbean, and be that intellectual, organizational, educational link. Venezuela, our ambassador to Venezuela, Ambassador Cheryl Miles, a good friend, She and I have already said, Ivelaw, we've got to do things more with Venezuela. The incoming ambassador to Brazil, Talbert, spoke on the phone last week, looking forward to doing things with Brazil. But there are so many more opportunities. Why shouldn't Guyana, through the University of Guyana, not be offering English as a second language to students from Venezuela, Brazil, Suriname, at the very least? We should be able to do that. And so, yes, it's ensuring that the connectivity that is a natural part of the world order, that we are not left out of that. And we've got to find ways to make the connections that we already have strong, viable, and functional. And we've got to look for new opportunities to make connectivity with Europe, with the Caribbean, with Asia, with Africa, with China. We've got a Confucius Institute, but we need to have much more than the institute doing social stuff. We've got to have hard intellectual engagements with the Chinese and with others. So yes, there are grand opportunities. And part of my mantra is opportunities and innovation. We've got to ask the question, where are there opportunities to do or to do better? Where are there opportunities to innovate? And sometimes innovation is not creating a new, it's just doing better what you've got. You know, maximizing the return on the investment, both on the human capital side and the finance capital side. And so, yes, Thomas Frieden didn't have to tell us that the world is flat. We are more seized on a daily basis of the importance of linking our part of the world, Caribbean, Guyana, to the rest of the world. And University of Guyana has a valuable role in that connectivity.
That you mentioned Venezuela and Brazil, and I'm thinking Suriname and other parts of South America. It is difficult, Dr. Griffith, to sit opposite you, knowing how versed you are in security. I'm not asking you to give a perspective on security by creating this kind of linkages through the university.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I proposed, and I'll talk a little bit about it on Sunday, and I'll talk about it on June the 5th at your college. You're having a session with alums and people of interest in the University of Guyana. And I want to come back to talk a little bit before we close about the symposium on June 5th at your college. I see an opportunity to be innovative at the University of Guyana in a variety of areas. Security is one of those areas. And I intend to establish an Institute for Security Studies. I've already alerted the director of the Perry Center for Hemispheric Defense Studies in Washington, where I got that Perry Award. And part of what I'm pleased about myself over the last few decades is I have a significant amount of goodwill that people have reached out to me to say, Ivelaw, let me know how I can help. So people elsewhere in the US national security arena say, Ivelaw, if there's anything you want me to do, I'm here for you. And so I plan to use the opportunity of Guyana and UG getting more actively in this national security, both by way of public security, meaning local crime issues, and international security, matters beyond the border, significant to which is a territorial issue. So I do intend to establish a Center for Security Studies. But, and I shared this concept with someone a few weeks ago. When we have that Center for Institute for National Security Studies, we've got to be offering a multilingual facility. We need to be holding conferences in English, Portuguese, and Spanish. We need to be having workshops where people can come and learn Portuguese and learn Spanish. I intend to pursue having a facility, not only for the security center. There are other centers I have in mind, one of which has to do with food security. Whatever we do, we've got to have the realization that English is a powerful, important language, but it is not the only language of importance to the Caribbean, to South America, and to Guyana. And so multilingual engagement is what my plan is to be able to do. And I can bet you $50 of your money, Selwyn, that Brazilian academic and governmental institutions will be happy to help us get there.
Yes.
I can bet you $100 of your money, Selwyn, that other, even Venezuelan academic institutions. I've got a good friend in Venezuela, Andres Servín, used to be president of Invest for a long time. There are ways in which we can build the connectivity, notwithstanding whatever issues, territorial challenges and political issues there may be. But we've got to make sure that we are in sync with the hemisphere in the region, and that English, important though it is not the only lingua franca.
This brings me to my next question about resources, because as you lay out that idea, that plan, what comes to mind is, how is this going to happen? The university, some of its issues has been blamed on lack of resources and so on. You articulated the two resources, two important resources, financial and human capital, when you were here at my other show, other program. How do you plan, if it's not premature to ask this question, to capitalize on those two resources to make this possible?
Part of what is good about where Guyana is and where the University of Guyana is and will be is a recognition on the part of the new political leadership that education generally and higher education in particular is a critical variable in any development matrix that Guyana has. And so there is strong evidence, not only platitudinous evidence, that the government of Guyana sees the importance of investing financially. I intend to hold the government of Guyana to that promise. The Minister of Finance, Winston Jordan, who is a product of the University of Guyana, he was a year behind me, in the last budget speech for 2016, pointed to the government's willingness to give a 52% increase in the subvention. Now, given where the university is, 52% increase over last year is not going to go very far. Right. But it was also good for Minister Jordan to say that this is the first step. And so I am comforted in the fact that there is a willingness on the part of the government that it has to put more financial and human capital into its national university. But I would also say quickly, Selwyn, that even if Guyana had all the money it could, and we have difficulty financially, no public university should rely only upon the government. And so my intent is to broaden the portfolio of resource acquisition. And guess who constitute a significant part of that broadening? Alumni of the University of Guyana. There are thousands of people who have graduated from that university. Most of them have gone beyond Guyana's shores. And many of them have done very well. But also, guess what? Many are willing now to contribute. And I intend to make that willingness be manifest by asking people and facilitating. And I will give you one thing that is, for me, good evidence of the willingness. Knowing the importance of tapping in beyond the government, I sent a request to, beginning with some of my close friends, some of whom are alums, some of whom are not alums. Say, look, I want to have a resource mobilization conference in Guyana at the university next month in June. Can you come? I don't have money to pay you to get there. I can find hotel and meals for you. Selwyn, within 72 hours, I had more than 30 people responding, yes. And so between June 23rd and 25th, we're going to have a number of alums and others from the diaspora, along with folks in Guyana, coming for 2 days of asking, how can we help? They're coming from New York, they're coming from New Jersey, from Alabama, from Ontario, from Toronto, from British Columbia, from Pennsylvania, Georgia, Florida, California. And so I feel comforted at the fact that this is a moment for us to look for a resource acquisition beyond the government. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about this on the 22nd of May at a session I'm hosting in Turkine, but also on June 5 in York. That will be an important starting point of saying, let's harness the resources of people who have the ability. And they don't all have the ability to give big money,
Right.
but they may know of other kinds of relationships that can be leveraged.
Yes.
And so I'm not looking only for big bucks. I'm looking for small bucks too. Take your $5, Selwyn.
It helps.
It helps.
What excites you about being able to serve Guyana in this capacity, Dr. Griffith?
Being able to make a difference in an area that is critical. And being able to make a difference at a time when there is a broader opportunity in the nation. You know, some good friends encouraged me to go back years ago, and I did go back in 2009 when Compton Bourne was being installed as Chancellor. But what I saw at the time, I didn't even have a conversation seriously with my wife, because it was clear to me that it would not have been an opportune time. There was not a readiness on and off campus for the kinds of things which if I were to go any place, I'd want to try to make a difference in.
What is it in the tenor and tone of the ethos of Guyana today that has convinced you that now is the right time?
Change.
Yeah.
Change has risks, but change has rewards. And I think that there is, with the political change of May 15, a year ago, a willingness on the part of citizens to do differently in and out of Guyana. You know, if you had a chance to come, battling a cold. You get a chance to come on June 5 to the symposium, which I'll talk a little about in a minute. You will see a diversity of Guyana, which I can bet you $100 of your money a year ago you would not have seen. Talking about Guyana, Guyana's peoples. And so there's a recognition that the nation cannot afford to keep doing what it has done for the last number of years. And so there is a willingness to embrace a different something. And that different something has got to be a different something in education. And so that opportunity to seize the desirability for change, I think allows me to feel confident that I can make a contribution to enabling that change in the higher education.
I must underscore your point about the diversity, because just before my last 5-part series, there's a series, 5-part series on Guyana 15, how we move the country forward, where the spectrum of our ethnic makeup came on the show to discuss how we could move the country forward in a respectful way.
Right.
So I am confident and I am hopeful. Before we take a quick break, Dr. Griffith, let's talk about the symposium.
Symposium is an opportunity for our national celebrations to take account of the wholeness of Guyana. You know, any milestone like an independence jubilee has got to be celebratory in the arts and the culture, but it needs to seize the opportunity to reflect in a substantive way. And the Symposia series, so there are 2 parts of the series in Georgetown, May 23rd and 24th, and then the 3rd part of the series in New York on June 5th. That series is an opportunity for cerebral engagement, for us to ask the sometimes uncomfortable questions in an academic arena where civility is an important hallmark, but where free and frank conversation is an important hallmark. And so what you'll see on June 5 is the 3rd of the Symposia series, starting on Monday, May the 23rd, Arthur Chung Center. Tuesday, May 24, Arthur Chung Center. And then June 5th, it's Sunday, June 5th. But we're not only having academic discourse, There's going to be a cerebral engagement regarding the things about Guyana overall. So there'll be conversations and performances about Guyana's culture. There is a whole conversation about food and culture. There is some practicality along with that cerebral engagement. But there is also, we also thought it important to not just have this talking and doing on those 3 days, but we want to leave a legacy of an intellectual kind. And so we have been amassing a bibliography about Guyana. Things written by Guyanese, things written about Guyana over the last decades. Let's put them in one compilation. And so we've got a team led in the US by Dr. Simone Alexander from Seton Hall University, New Jersey, along with folks in and around the US and folks in Guyana. And that would be an opportunity to say, separate and apart from the papers and presentations, here is part of the legacy of this intellectual and social discourse over the 3 days of the symposium.
I want to beg your indulgence. Let me just read a few comments from the chat room before we take the break. Esther, good evening. Dr. Griffith, good evening. Selwyn, Dr. Griffith, as a linguist, couldn't help noticing that you mentioned Spanish and Portuguese, but not French. Even though there's just one French-speaking country in South America, there are quite a few in the Caribbean, and it still is a world language. Would you consider adding it to your program? I refer to the workshops, etc., that you mentioned.
Sure, absolutely. And if you push the envelope further, there still are parts of the Caribbean that has a Lusophone connection. There are parts of the Caribbean that speak Portuguese, separate and apart from Brazil, that is South American. If you go to Aruba, you go to Curaçao, you go to Ceiba, St. Eustatius, you will hear not only Papiamento, you'll hear some Portuguese. And so yes, and we'll hear Dutch, and you'll hear other languages. The question has got to be asked, are we able to afford doing all of them at the same time at the beginning? So I would start with the Spanish and Portuguese, and then extend the portfolio of languages to French and Papiamento. An important part of the conversation in relation to the non-Anglophone Caribbean is when you come to Haiti, which is an important part of the Caribbean, not only is French important for Haiti, but Creole is also important for Haiti. And so I would envisage at one time in the history of things developed in Guyana, we want to extend that envelope of linguistic engagement beyond the Spanish and the Portuguese.
Let's take a break.
Not everyone who calls out to me, Lord, Lord, will enter into the kingdom of heaven. Only those that actually do the will of my Father will enter. On judgment day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name? And cast out demons in your name? And in your name have we not worked many miracles? But I will reply, depart from me, ye workers of iniquity, I never knew you. Woo! Alright, let us separate the sheep from the goats. I'll recommend you take notes. Alright, pull your head out the cloud for a minute. Let the truth hit you where it hurts most.
I just wanna know.
When last you preached Jesus?
I just wanna know.
When last you fed the hungry?
I just wanna know.
When last you took the time to think about somebody else apart from you?
Hands up,
If you're rapping the Lord,
hands up,
if you're preaching the word,
hands up,
if you about your daddy's business, the kingdom's prepared for you.
hands up,
If you got a heart for the lost,
hands up,
if you fetching the cross,
hands up.
if you about your father's business, the kingdom's prepared for you. The kingdom is yours. Come on, clap.
The kingdom is yours.
Said it in your word, yeah.
The kingdom is yours.
Kingdom is yours.
The kingdom is yours. Alright,
Don't you know we got work to do? This thing is bigger than you.
alright.
This world is not our home, and we just a passing through.
I just wanna know.
When last you fed the thirsty?
I just wanna know.
When last you clothed the homeless?
I just wanna know.
When last you took the time to think about somebody else apart from you?
Hands up,
If you're rapping the Lord,
hands up.
if you're preaching.
We are back with Dr. Ivelaw Griffith. Dr. Griffith, what are some common sense principles, I should say, you believe can be implemented immediately?
I think it's important to, and this is true for any university, any level of leadership university, to articulate some important principles in the context of values. And it was a good question in relation to that asked during the search process by the head of the union, and I'll tell you what I said to the committee. The various places that I've had the opportunity to be a teacher, a scholar, an academic leader, I've tried to own and practice a couple of values, and I will be taking some of those today. First one has to do with excellence. Guyana can least afford, the University of Guyana can least afford to be comfortable with mediocrity. And so I'll be pushing the envelope on, if we think this is good, is it good enough from the vantage point of a student? If you think this is good, is it good enough? Whatever the it is from the vantage point of lecturers, whether it's your teaching, your pedagogy, whether it's your research engagement, whether it's your service to the university community and to the broader community. Administrative leaders, if you think it's good, is it good enough? And so for me, it's always important to push the envelope on the what and the how, pushing the envelope in the direction of let's move to an excellence. And I'll tell you, my business card at UG is going to have at the back of it something that has been, if you go to Florida International, you see on the wall of the college that I had the honor of leading, simple sentence from Aristotle that I've taken over the decades. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act. I'll be asking for habituation of good practices. That for me is an important one. Now, that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that people who are not comfortable with excellence need to ask the question, is this the right place for them? And in the freedom that is Guyana's, people make choices about whether they should be at the university or go someplace else if they're not interested in excellence. A second important value for me is respect. And respect, by respect I mean not just saying good morning, good evening. By respect I mean, and this is going to be a major culture clash because it's a terrible thing for the entire Caribbean, timeliness. And I made the point during the public discourse. If you as a lecturer, and Guyana, and the University of Guyana is not the only institution that has experienced this, I experienced it at many places that I've had the opportunity to be in. You are the lecturer, you set your office hours. Why are you not there? If you agree to teach a class, and the class is supposed to start at 0900 hours, why are you not there? So respecting people's time, respect is an important value. Here's a third one. Integrity. Technology has allowed societies and individuals, Guyana and Guyanese, to push the envelope on values and morals. You can easily buy a paper online. Does that comport with integrity? I think not. You can easily plagiarize your research paper. Does that comport with integrity? I guess not. In a society where there is validity, it seems to me, with a lot of the allegations about corruption, we don't want the university to be a place, to be a zone for engaging in that kind of practice. whether financial or non-financial. And so I plan to have some banners on campus with these values so people can see them all the time. It's also important, and I think this is part of what has undermined confidence of lots of constituencies on campus, students, the unions in particular. Transparency. Why all the secrecy? So I intend to make a lot of stuff public. I intend to have a new website that is a little more user-friendly and put stuff there. So we've got to have a certain sense of comfort that, except for things that are protected under privacy rules that are people's personal matters, we should be embracing the community of the university and sharing, getting feedback. Is some of the feedback going to be negative? Yes. But if you're at a university, whether you're a lecturer or the Vice-Chancellor, you've got to be comfortable with criticism. Is some of the criticism going to be malicious? Yes. But that's the nature of being in a society where you have to let all ideas contend and bloom. Are there going to be people who are going to have their own agendas? Yes. We have to manage the agendas in a way that allows the greatest good be there for the greatest number, and enable the society, the community of the university, to see the value of putting the whole above the parts. And I can understand why there's a lot of morale issues at the University of Guyana, low salaries. We have to fix that this year. That's one of my top priorities. What some of the lecturers and the staff have been earning not only explains why morale is low and disrespect may be there, but it explains why the university has not been able to attract quality folk from outside. There is too much inbreeding at the University of Guyana. We've got to allow paying respectful salaries to people who are there now, and we've got to pay respectful salaries to people coming. Are we going to have the money to give 100% increase? I suspect not. But I would want to pledge for a 2 or 3 year process to make right at least part of what I see as a significant injustice insofar as the salaries to the lecturers and the staff on campus. And this is at all levels. That, I think, would engender a lot of sense of respect for self and for others. And an important part of building community. I'll tell you something which only a few people know, but more going to know now. I'll be doing as part of building community and respect. Father's Day this year, I'll be hosting a Father's Day luncheon on campus. Let's get some of the fathers to be celebrated. Let's talk about fatherhood. I'll do it for the mothers from next year. I'm not there, wasn't there for this Mother's Day. But we've got to ask the question, how can we find ways to build a sense of spirit, a sense of community, and build traditions? I'll be meeting with the student leaders when I go down to Guyana. And one of my questions to them is going to be, tell me what kind of traditions we should start thinking of that you would lead. I've got some ideas, but I want to have the students, I want to have the staff, I want to have the lecturers. I'll be meeting with people at a variety of levels, including the union people, because their voice and their role are important.
It feels as sort of nudging the university back to the center of the society.
At least to be a center of intellectual engagement, center for innovation, center for questioning, center for thinking big. Remember what Michelangelo said? The greatest danger for most of us is not that we aim low, aim high and we miss it. Is that we aim low and always reach our goals. You know, we have got to stop being comfortable with only picking the lowest fruit of the tree. You know, you've got to stretch a little bit.
Former Vice-Chancellor of the University of West Indies, Professor Nigel Harris, is now the 9th Chancellor of the University of Guyana. You were named the 9th President of Fort Valley State University. I can't help noticing the numeric similarities, but How does it feel to be working in this capacity so close with another Guyanese academic leader and teacher?
Not only another Guyanese academic leader and teacher, but a respected, experienced, accomplished. What he did at University of West Indies in a variety of respects allows Guyana and the university to benefit from that wealth. And I said it on campus, one of the things that we will have to do at the University of Guyana started to be done at University of West Indies way back. Started significantly with Rex Nettleford when he was Vice-Chancellor, and Nigel took it to the next level. And one of those connects to the alumni that I talked about. You know, every year in New York here, the University of West Indies Alumni Federation hosts a grand fundraiser. I attended many years to support. Your college bought a table, we bought tickets, and I said on campus, we will have to begin to learn from how we did it.
Yes.
And we have Nigel, who is our chancellor, can help us to leverage that. So not only is he an accomplished, respected administrator at the University of the West Indies, before that at Morehouse School of Medicine, but he has made significant leaps and bounds, allowing us at UG to benefit from some of the achievements, allowing us at UG to benefit from some of his networking and connectivity and his vision. So I'm excited to be part of a partnership enabling us to push the envelope.
How challenging would it be for the university to invest heavily in research and human resource and collaboration?
Part of the challenge is resources itself, and part of the challenge is the absorptive capacity to use the resources. Tell you what I mean. One of the critical weaknesses of Guyana at the secondary, primary, secondary, and I would argue at the tertiary level is in the science, in the engineering. For us to push the envelope on science and engineering, not only do we have to have the human capitals, able people to teach, but we have to have the lab and research facilities. Getting those built is not just having the money, it's having the equipment, the personnel to do the thing, install them. And Guyana is challenged with that. You go to the campus, you will see simple things like furniture. Bought 1 month, next month dysfunctional. And so for me, it's going to be important to ask the question, all right, when we get the money, do we have the skill, manpower, do we have all the requisite things to do what needs to be done? Which means some of what we're going to need to do at the University of Guyana is going to require leveraging the diaspora. And part of the conversation we're having in June is not only about financial resources, it's about human resources. I'll give you 2 examples. I've already said to the university campus, we need to stimulate research, both at the level of the students and the level of the academic staff. I've already sent to 3 individuals on campus the application form for the University of Guyana to join something called the Council on Undergraduate Research. It's a US-based organization where students, I set it up at Florida International when I was Dean of the Honors College, I set it up at York College. As a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago at York, there was a 7th Student Research Day. Now, it means that when we ask the question, is there anyone in the university who can lead that? The answer is likely to be no. So I'll be asking Guyanese in the diaspora, can any one of you who have had experience in leading student research programs come and help us get it started? That's one of the things. Similarly, you're going to need a Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence. You know, there's a fallacy in the academy which I'm pleased to say that over the last decade or so, it's being addressed. The fallacy is that if you have a PhD, you know how to teach. That's not necessarily true. And so many universities, including the ones I've had the privilege of being at, have seen the wisdom of setting up arrangements where you can help your teaching staff to do better. We need a center for teaching and learning at university. I intend to look to the diaspora to say, and I know people who've done this at high levels, come and help University of Guyana to get the center established. And so I'll be looking for the diaspora to help us not only with the infusion of financial and human capital, but with those absorptive capacity issues. Because you can say, here's the $1 million for the Center for Teaching and Learning. The question is, do you have the facilities? Do you have the staff? And do you have the staff that is competent? And so my inclination is going to be what it always has been. I am not concerned with your political affiliation or your race. I'm concerned with your competence. And if you're not competent to do X, we should give you an opportunity to exercise your talent where your competence lies. And the reality is that we need to be tapping the broad landscape of Guyanese at home and abroad to make an appreciable difference.
Describe a UG for us, and I'm asking you to do a projection here. If such investments were to become one of the institution's primary primary commitment and focus, describe what UG would look like.
UG would look like a place where every important element of Guyana's trajectory for growth and development has a connectivity on the educational side. I'll give you one example of what I'm talking about. Guyana is in the early stages of oil exploration. The question is, should the university be in the business of helping the nation get to that? I plan to pursue that. Guyana has wonderful agricultural resources. Should the university be in a better position to help Guyana and the region and South America leverage some of that? Guyana has a challenge with ethnic and racial diversity. Shouldn't the University of Guyana be a place that can facilitate some of those questions about education, about engagement, about things having to do with diversity? Guyana has a wonderful diaspora. Why is the university not in the business of a diaspora conversation? And so I intend to have a center for diasporic engagement at university. The University of Guyana needs to be the place where Guyanese at home and Guyanese abroad are having conversations about what, how, and how to connect better. And so I've already spoken to a couple of people, one in Washington, D.C., two in New York, one in Georgia. We need, among the things, to have the university ask those questions about a nation. What is it is of importance to the nation? How can we help? If you ask that question, knowing where Guyana is and wants to be or should be, cannot ignore the issue of national security, cannot ignore the issue of diaspora, cannot ignore the issue of food security, cannot ignore the issue of youth empowerment, cannot ignore the issue of social inclusion and diversity. And so, for me, the ideal University of Guyana in the next, let's say, 10 years hence, would be a robust enterprise that is both educational and economic, helping to serve as a fulcrum around which the nation and the region's pursuits revolve in some respect.
President Range is pushing for the development of Guyana's hinterlands. Do you envision UG campuses in some of these remote areas?
Yes, but I think UG has and Guyana has to manage the balance between physical expansion and technological expansion. And so we've got to ask the question, how might we do better than we are using the technology that exists for online, for remote distance learning? A good bit of that is happening now. But I also see the importance of some physical expansion. When we have, and I said when, not if, when we have in Ghana, and I may not be the person to be there to cut the ribbon, when we have a school for energy and mines at the University of Ghana, why should there not be a location at Linden?
It's a great question.
And so if you ask the question, what are the things the university needs to be in, and given the geographic location of certain resources where there may be a link between the resource and what you're pursuing, you've got to think of a dispersal beyond Tain and Johns and Turkine. And in my mind, if you're thinking gold, bauxite, manganese, diamonds, Linden looks like a pretty attractive place to have a site, a campus. And so yes, but we've got to be mindful of the financial implications of it, and we've got to be mindful of the technology that permits us to do certain things now and into the future as a stage 1 or a stage 2 to a physical location.
In the chat room, Michelle Foster says, it's great to hear that Dr. Griffith met with community residents. Is there an extension arm at UG that works with NGOs and communities on community development programming?
I don't know that there is, but we'll certainly be having a connectivity to the diaspora, to the alumni. One of the things that I did at Fort Valley, I'll be doing at the University of Ghana. I had a Global Initiatives Council. I'll be having one there as well. I'll be establishing a Civic and Business Council. Guyana's National University needs to tap not only are a number of the businessmen alums at the university, but they're willing to find ways to partner. And if you're able to come on June 23rd to 25, you'll see a lot of them there. Because they want to find a way. I've already approached one of the people who I plan to have be one of the co-chairs of the Civic and Business Engagement Council. So yes, we're going to have an infrastructure that allows us to do. Now, we don't have the money to hire staff to do all of that. And so I intend to take the off of many alums who've retired and return to Guyana to be volunteers, to help us do some of the things that need to be done in the absence of money to hire people.
You know, I just recently engaged, had the honor of inviting some young Guyanese in business to come on the show. And so entrepreneurship is a big thing for me. At Fort Valley, you push for that entrepreneurship program. Do you see this possibility at the University of Guyana?
Selwyn, it's not just a possibility, it's a necessity.
Oh my God.
And I'm hoping that in September, we'll bring a team down, some of whom were part of the team at Fort Valley. I'm not going to tell you the name, but I'll tell you what state they're from. The team will be headed from someone in Georgia. It will comprise another business school dean from New York and another business school dean from the UE system, along with local folks. Their mission, their task is to give us a feasibility study for a school of entrepreneurship and business innovation. And my hope is that we'll get going in short order with that. The person heading the team is said, let me know when I can travel, Vice-Chancellor. So yes, and part of my vision for that school of entrepreneurship and business innovation has to do with the economic aspect of the society. I stayed when I was in Guyana last. I stayed at Grand Coastal Hotel, nice hotel. I asked for tea. I've stopped drinking coffee. Brought me Lipton tea. I said, well, do you have any mint? Do you have any local herbs? No. So I said, why isn't somebody, Guyana has so much bush, so many herbs. Why isn't there a micro enterprise, a small enterprise, helping to do for that? The University of the Guyana needs to be the laboratory
Yes.
for things like that.
There is, I'm going to make a plug for a friend who I've had the privilege of interviewing on my program, Mark Nalgetti, who is based in the UK, and has a factory. He manufactures seed from these local herbs and so on. Mark might be a very good person to contact when you're ready to implement that.
Absolutely. Send him a note and send me his details.
I will. I definitely will. I had the privilege, this time always flies out on us, of asking you about some leaders the last time we sat opposite each other. But I'm going to open up the question a little bit and ask you this. If you were in a room with the following leaders, Dr. Eric Williams, Michael Manley, Dr. Fidel Castro, Forbes Burnham, Dr. Chenna Jagan, and Dr. Walter Rodney, what would you ask each of them? Let me start with Dr. Williams.
There is a common question that I think, benefit from each of them. And that common question is, in their journeys political, in their journeys academic, because many of those people who you talked about were academics. Some are academics and politicians in the case of Eric Williams. Might there have been one moment, one episode that would have allowed them to do something different in that journey, whether it's academic or political? It would have been interesting to hear what Eric Williams or Forbes Burnham or Fidel Castro. Because I think it's important for us who are beneficiaries of the giants on whose shoulders we stand to sometimes ask the question, what might they have done differently that would allow us in our next sets of journeys to perhaps think about as things we might do differently. It's often said that hindsight is an important part of other people's enterprise. It would have been a question I would have loved to hear Fidel, Forbes Burnham, Walter Anthony Rodney, and others ponder.
What would success at the University of Guyana look like to you, Dr.
I don't think there's any one indicator of success. I can give you a couple. Success will be reflected, in my view, when the medical school is restored to its accreditation. First. Success will have been achieved when the staff and the faculty will have been remunerated differently and better for their engagements. Success will have been achieved, in my view, when the teaching and the learning allows the students to be products of the university where they are respected by their employers. I hear too many negative comments about the students coming out of university. It's just a reality. And so if the people who are benefiting from what the products of the university are making disparaging remarks about those products, that for me is an institution in search of a better success indicator. And so for me, it's important. But it's also true that success has got to be a function of a response to the question, what innovation might the university pursue? What missed opportunities are now opportunities for the moment that the university can pursue? And in the context of opportunities, there is a rich landscape of opportunities. I've mentioned some of them, and we'll start some of them soon. We're going to start the journey of looking at a business school soon. We're going to start a journey of looking at an Institute for National Security Studies soon, and others. But we have to embrace our alumni. And we're going to be starting doing that this coming Sunday on campus, the following Sunday in New York, and elsewhere. I have a commitment to go to Ghana for a Commonwealth Universities meeting in July. And I said to members of the team, on the way back from Ghana, I want us to stop in London and talk to the alums. You have a wealth of Guyanese alums and non-alums, and non-Guyanese who have been beneficiaries of what Guyana has produced in Guyana, and beneficiaries of Guyanese across the world, and have a respect for Guyana and want to give back. I want to meet some of those folks in London and say, help me understand how you can better help our university.
In the chat room, Esther said, I found myself singing the first two words of a song, At Last. I feel very optimistic about the future of our university. There's a bright light at the end of the tunnel. I wish you well, sir.
Thank you, Esther. But I'll be calling on the Esthers and the Jacks and the Selwyns of the world to put money where mouth is. We not only need well wishes for the Vice-Chancellor,
Yes.
we need tangible and intangible resources to be leveraged to benefit that institution.
Dr. Griffith, once again, thank you.
Thank you, delighted. Hope I can see you in June in Georgetown.
You will be seeing me in June, Dr. Griffith.
Okay.